Welcome to episode 4 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening to us and watching us on YouTube as well. It is a great time to be a Leafs fan right now because as of Sunday morning, January 31st, 2021. The Toronto Maple Leafs are currently tied with the Washington Capitals for first place in the NHL standings with 15 points. The Capitals technically have a better points percentage, but the Leafs are off to a very nice 7-2-1 start after the first 10 games, sitting in first place in the Canadian division ahead of the Habs and Canucks. And we are going to go over the week that was and give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that went down with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But before we do that, Lepore, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. All is good in Leafland, as you said. 7-2-1 through 10 games. Leafs fans got to be excited. That's the good side of it. The bad side of it is that we still have a podcast, which means that neither you or I invested in GameStop. So kind of cringy about that, but happy about the Leafs, bro. Happy about the Leafs.
Yeah, a little rattled I didn't jump on the GameStop train. I was about to do it, but you know what they say? Like the absolute worst time to invest in a stock like that is when literally everybody is talking about it.
Right. By the time you find out about it, it's too late.
But yeah, and like you said, I mean, we still have a podcast, which means that we
good news and bad news, everyone. Sorry, everyone. We still have a podcast.
Oh man. Well, hopefully we catch the next big thing that's coming up.
Yeah.
And then maybe Lepore, I don't ever want to stop this podcast. We're going to keep going, right?
No, man.
I mean, I'm
going to be a $60 million Lotto Max winner. We're still going to do it every day.
There we go, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, man. So I guess getting into the week that was for the Toronto Maple Leafs, it was pretty solid. 2-0-1.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, their record now stands at 7-2-1 after the first 10 games. They started the week on Tuesday against the Calgary Flames, picking up a 4-3 win. The Leafs dominated the first period. The Flames dominated the second period. But then Marner scored the game winner in the third. And then there was the whole incident between Jake Muzzin and Matthew Tkachuk, where Muzzin flipped the puck at him after the final buzzer. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Can't wait.
The Leafs continued their week on Thursday with a 4-3 win over the Edmonton Oilers. There was like 10 power plays in that game. It was crazy. Power play goals back and forth. Matthew scored the game winner for Toronto. So that was their second win of the week. And then they finished things off on Saturday, losing in overtime to the Edmonton Oilers. Both teams debuted their reverse retro jerseys. Lepore, I know you have some very strong opinions on that, which we'll get into later in the podcast. And it was the Connor McDavid show on Saturday night. I mean, he was incredible. Scored 2 goals, the OT winner, 3-point night. And just like that, the Leafs 2-0-1 this week. So, Lepore, just give me your general thoughts on what you saw from the Leafs in week 3 of the season.
I guess we can be broad talking about these games. They look different to me. And I'm sure talking to a lot of Leafs fans, they're seeing the same thing. I don't feel as nervous about this team watching them. I think we can all look back at Leafs fans at like the recent seasons, and there was that little thing we would get in our stomachs and our throat whenever the puck was in our own end. And you can't exactly put your finger on it, but it must just be better overall team defense and solid play. And it's such a nice feeling to have, to knowing that there actually is progression. Like, we absolutely destroyed this team in the first show, or the second show, talking about the games against Ottawa and how they didn't look that good and the same old mistakes. But this team's buttoned up. And then anyone who wants to argue about that, just look at their record. They're 7-2-1. Their defensive numbers are very strong. They're not giving up a lot of shots. What is there really to complain about right now? I mean, the one thing we can point to is their 5-on-5 play. But we talked about that last week. We expect that to adjust with the talent they have. But overall, I mean, like you said, this team is at the top of the standings. They look good defensively. And we'll touch on it again, I'm sure, going to the game specifically. They're getting goaltending. There's guys stepping up. it seems like the star players are putting in the numbers. You don't say it too often, but all is good in Leafland right now. Anyway, what was your take on the week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you on a lot of those points you just hit on. And, I think in the past, you look at the Leafs and there's always something that you can look at and nitpick and say, they're not doing this well, they're not doing that well. And right now, Lepore, honestly, everything is going very well besides, like you mentioned, probably the 5-on-5 play. Right now, they're only outscoring their opponents 17-16 at 5-on-5.
That's
but
crazy.
As we know, the power play is humming along beautifully. The Leafs 13 for 30 so far on the power play, clicking at 43%. I mean, and both power play units have been good.
Yeah.
And, we've said on the podcast before, me specifically, where I said, just load up that top unit, with all the stars. But it seems like that really doesn't need to happen at this point because both units are contributing. Manny Malhotra, who's, taking control of the power play, is doing a really good job. But I think the one thing with the Leafs, and I've been, listening to Sheldon Keefe and Matthews and, a bunch of the other players who are talking post game, they all seem to be saying that this team still hasn't hit that level. Yeah. And despite how well they're actually playing, there's still another level this team can take it to, which is actually kind of scary when you think about it, because they're off to a great start. They're tied with the Caps for first place in the NHL with 15 points. And yet you have the head coach and some of these star players who are coming out and saying, like, we still have not played our best game. And again, I think that goes back to the whole 5-on-5 situation where, they've only outscored their opponents by 1 goal at 5-on-5. And they know that they can take it to the next level because this team over the last few years has been incredible at 5-on-5, right? Yeah. So I think that's maybe the one thing that we can nitpick. But honestly, Lepore, other than that, it's been fantastic.
Are there any players, like when we look at these first 10 games, does any player come to mind for you that you're not impressed with, or you're kind of disappointed with their performance, or just wanting more?
So when I think about the stars on the team,
right,
I think they've all been playing well. You just look at their numbers, right? Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander. The numbers are all there. They're all essentially point per game players. They're all scoring. They're all contributing. I think maybe the one thing I'd like to see a little bit more of is more contributions from guys like Ilya Mikheyev, who's been pretty snake bitten so far.
Oh yeah, he's been really unlucky. He's looking, it just won't go in for him.
Like he might be the main guy that I'm kind of looking for some more offense from. And I mean, even Zach Hyman to a certain extent. And the reason I mentioned those two guys is because at the end of the day, I think the Leafs' most optimal lineup has Hyman in that top 6, playing with Matthews and Marner, and even Mikheyev on that second line with Tavares and Nylander. And I know things have been getting shuffled around throughout the season. And, we've seen Jimmy Vesey playing with Tavares and Nylander. But those are the two guys that I want to see a little bit more from, just because I view them as top 6 forwards on this team. So I'd like to see maybe a little bit more from Mikheyev and Hyman. And Hyman's been fine, but Mikheyev is, he hasn't scored yet. Yeah. He's getting opportunities. He's just not really, racking up points on the score sheet. So
it just won't go in. Like some of them, it's like, man, would it just go in, cross the goal line, for crying out loud? But God,
exactly. And it's just one of those things, right? Sometimes you just kind of get unlucky. Yeah. Like you get a lot of scoring chances, shots on goal, and then sometimes the puck just isn't going in. But yeah, maybe those are the two guys I point to. How about you? Is there anyone who's kind of stood out that you're looking for more from?
I may get jumped on for this, but is it unfair to me, or is it unfair for me to circle Morgan Rielly?
Ooh, Lepore is going there, eh?
Yeah, and we pumped his tires like crazy the first couple shows, and we love Morgan Rielly. I think there's not many Leafs fans who don't love Morgan Rielly, but in a weird way, I think he's been quiet. And for a player of that brand on our team and what he means to the Toronto Maple Leafs, being quiet is not quite good enough. Like we talked to the guys we brought in, like we talked about TJ Brody. We talked about how impressed we are with Justin Holl. And we're so impressed with them because there's nothing to talk about. But Morgan Rielly is the best defenseman on the team. we talk about Morgan Rielly as a potential Norris Trophy candidate. So for him, and I know like we're this team's 7-2-1, we got to find something to point at and complain about. For him, I don't think being quiet is good enough. We're used to seeing him rush the puck a lot, contribute a lot offensively, get the puck to the forwards. And I think his numbers are there. He's packing up a lot of assists, but I don't feel that same force from him that I'm used to seeing. Have you noticed that at all?
I mean, for the most part, I think I've liked how Riley's played, and I can see where you're coming from. And you do make a good point where, yeah, his points are there. He has 7 points in the first 10 games, but he got like 5 of those 7 points in only 2 games.
Oh, okay.
I believe he had a 3-point game against the Flames and had a 2-point game to open the season. So he's been a little bit inconsistent in terms of, his production on the score sheet.
Yeah, and the one goal was the 3-on-3 overtime.
So. Yeah, exactly. So I could see why you'd want to see a little bit more. And listen, Lepore, I what I think about Morgan Rielly. I'm like captain of the Morgan Rielly fan club. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to see a little bit more offensively from him. I think there are times where, what I do like about him is how he jumps into the play and he's aggressive and he tries to get involved offensively. And, sometimes it leads to mistakes and teams going the other way. But I think Sheldon Keefe has given him that leash where he's essentially allowed to do whatever the hell he wants out there. Mm-hmm. And I think he's earned it. But yeah, I mean, I would just like to see maybe a little bit more consistency offensively from him. But in terms of what I'm seeing from his actual play and his aggressiveness and jumping into the play, I've liked what I've seen so far. But I do want to see a little bit more consistency from him offensively for sure.
Yeah. I wonder too, like how we talked about how the team right now, it seems like they're just so focused on playing well defensively that maybe Keefe has them just aligning to do that. And until we talk about, their 5-on-5 numbers not being the greatest, and maybe his mindset is, okay, just get focused on the defensive play. Everything else will come. And as the season progresses, hopefully everything works out the way we hope it does. So I wonder if it's that, like maybe he is focusing more on his defensive play rather than rushing the puck. And again, too, like we forget things that shots, like this team's scoring like crazy on the power play. So there's that thing of, well, I'm not really needed to do that because we are scoring on the power play. So maybe if they weren't scoring on the power play, he would be doing that. Like we both know we're nitpicking here on Morgan Rielly, number 1, and kind of any Leaf player, number 2 in general. But yeah, like, I mean, if there's one thing to circle, I'd say Rielly. We want to see a little more Morgan, just a little more.
Fair enough. And you know what? I guess there's one other player who we forgot to mention. Just looking at his numbers, and I think he's been actually playing fairly well, but it's Freddie Anderson.
Oh yeah.
Because I look at his numbers and he still has a save percentage under 900, hasn't looked totally sharp. And I know he made a monster save to essentially give the Leafs a point in their final game of the week against Edmonton.
Yeah.
The final 15 seconds on Josh Archibald just absolutely stoned him. But just looking at the overall numbers of Freddie Anderson, I want to see that save percentage, back above 910, 915, where he's usually been as a member of the Leafs, despite his struggles from last season. So he's another guy. I don't know. What have you thought about Anderson? I may be disagreeing with you on this one, Bruno, because I'd like to see his numbers if you remove that one Ottawa game. Because like we're still early, and he got beat for 5 in that game, was it? Yeah.
So we're early. If you remove that one game, his numbers probably adjust to something more in like the solid department. But he seems to be making the big saves, and he seems to be looking more confident overall. Can we, like, I'm going to go Don Cherry now. Can we attest that to, yeah, you laugh at that. Can we point to maybe getting pushed by Campbell? For him, if he is, I mean, I think he's playing well. You think he's not. But like, I was wondering that to myself last night, like, because he did play fairly well, making some stops. He seems pretty confident. Is it that maybe for the first time as a goalie for the Toronto Maple Leafs, he's getting pushed? I mean, maybe you hope so. Like you hope the competition's working in our favor, making him play better. But I don't know. Like I think, like I said, I think I disagree with you on that one. Like I think Freddie's been good. And again, I'm with you. I want to say percentage to be better, but I do think if we do take away that single Sens game, it may be something that we're more impressed with, or at least we're okay with.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you take away that 5 spot against Ottawa, things are probably looking a little bit differently. And I think you do make a good point about Jack Campbell because, listen, Jack Campbell's a legit backup. And I know he's injured right now, but he came in and the games that he played, he was really solid.
Yeah.
The numbers are there. And even if you go back to last season, he was a very calming presence as the number 2 goalie. And I know now the Michael Hutchinson nightmare is potentially coming back.
The nerves.
We have not seen him yet.
Yeah, sorry, I take it back. What did I say earlier? All is good in Leafland. Yeah, nope. That didn't last very long. We're nervous again. The insecurities are coming out again.
Until we see the first sign of Michael Hutchinson and him allowing like 6 goals on 13 shots. But no, I mean, I think it's good for Freddie Anderson having a guy like Jack Campbell as the backup. You would think it's going to push him to be better throughout the season. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, for the most part, the last number of games, Freddie's making the big saves when the Leafs need it. Yeah. And that is going to be very important with this team, especially as they progress through the season and go into the playoffs. So speaking of the goaltending situation, in that first game of the week against the Calgary Flames, Matthew Tkachuk falls on top of Jack Campbell. The media blows it up, saying Tkachuk is up to his usual antics.
What a guy.
And he probably was, even though he totally denied it and said, oh, whatever, I was just battling in front of the net. We all know what Matthew Tkachuk was doing. So
yeah,
next game on Tuesday against the Calgary Flames, Leafs win, the buzzer goes, and amazing. Jake Muzzin, the hero we all needed,
amazing,
comes in, flips the puck at Matthew Tkachuk, trolling the biggest troll in the league. I loved it, Lepore. I thought it was fantastic. Man. I've been waiting for that from the Leafs. We need someone who's just going to go out there, piss people off, and make sure that you cannot fuck with this team at all. And I know it was just a little troll, and it wasn't really a big thing in the grand scheme of things, but I loved that from Jake Muzzin. It was amazing.
What makes it so awesome to me is that it's because it was so subtle. It's not a punch in the face or a cross check. It's just that little like flip of the puck. Fuck you, we won. And like and then everyone knows in any environment you're in, that's just enough to send you wild. And to me, it's so funny. Like you see that situation with Tkachuk, and number one, of course, he's gonna deny it. And then you have people debating, arguing whether he did it on purpose. Oh, so it was a coincidence that it just happened to be Tkachuk. It's like when something amazing happens, and like I'll say it, like a few years ago, that crazy Ovechkin goal when he was laying on the ice and he put it behind his head. People was like, "Oh, it was a fluke." I'm like, so it was just a coincidence that it was Ovechkin who did something that amazing. Like, no. So we're allowed to assume what we assume when it comes to things that we've seen before. So number one, Tkachuk 100% did it on purpose. Then number two, that flip of the puck. Did you see the response? Yeah, we're going to call out a fan base here on Gluttons For Punishment. Did you see the response from some of the Flames fans calling what Jake Muzzin did like atrociously dangerous?
Oh yeah,
like
that's
like
just
guys,
embarrassing.
Yeah, guys, come on, like putting your hands up, being like, do you know how dangerous that was? You could have got it in the face. Like, oh my god, please. But just to see that, and knowing exactly what he was doing, knowing that it would rattle his fucking cage, knowing that it would start to scrum afterwards, that he knows Tkachuk's going to stand up for himself, but he didn't care. That's so awesome. That is so awesome for the team. And again, going Don Cherry again for the second time in this episode, it's such a good thing to see for the team to say like these guys are together, these guys care, and then to see all the Leafs players skate in after and whatever. And Tkachuk was by himself, and we'll talk about that. But like I think it was something so small, but something that shows a lot about Muzzin and about the team and about the group. And again, like something positive for Leafs fans to talk about. Because like let's be honest, like we didn't see that stuff in recent years. Because let's say it, like he said, "Fuck you." Like he gave the middle finger to Tkachuk, saying like, "You did this to our goalie, and well, we won, so fuck you." Like I love it. By the way, my wife told me I'm only allowed 2 fucks an episode. So I think we've already passed that.
Already hit the over on that pretty hard.
I think she forgot that this is a podcast about the Toronto Maple Leafs. So yeah, we're way over the F-bomb limit. But yeah, what was your take on the whole thing?
But yeah, so here's the thing with Matthew Tkachuk. I love the way he plays.
Oh, of course you do.
And if you're any team in the National Hockey League, you would love for that guy to be on your team.
100%.
Because not only is he an amazing troll, an amazing pest, he's also a very good hockey player as well, which people tend to forget sometimes when it comes to guys like, Matthew Tkachuk or Brad Marchand. Like, these guys are really good players,
and they're rare breeds in today's NHL. Those guys don't exist anymore. We said if we go back to the 80s and 90s, we could list 10 or 20 of those guys. Now there's 4 or 5. That's it.
Exactly. There's just not a lot of those guys out there, and to have one of those guys, I think is just so important. And listen, I'm not putting Jake Muzzin, in the same tier as a player like Matthew Tkachuk in terms of what they bring to the overall game, but just having guys like Jake Muzzin and Wayne Simmons who aren't afraid at all of anybody, and they'll get in your face, they'll fight someone, they'll throw a big hit, they'll troll the biggest troll in the league like we saw Jake Muzzin do. And I think it just sends a message. And again, I don't want to blow this out of proportion and say, this is incredible. This is the greatest in Leafs history. But seriously, like we have not seen this from the Leafs in so long. Like I have to go back to like the Darcy Tucker days where, he was essentially like Matthew Tkachuk, right? Where he loved pissing people off and chirping and he just wouldn't shut his mouth, right? But to have a guy like Jake Muzzin on the blue line, because if you think about the rest of the Leafs blue line, right? Morgan Rielly, TJ Brody, Bogosian, Dermott, like none of these guys are sort of like in your face guys. And sure, maybe you can point to a guy like Zach Bogosian who likes to rough it up a little bit. But for the most part, Jake Muzzin is the guy that has that identity on the Leafs blue line. And he's essentially the guy that brings that identity onto this team, right? I think it's pretty much him and Wayne Simmons, right? So I love seeing that. And I think come playoff time, just to know that, listen, you cannot fuck with us. That's what I like to see. And even if it takes a little moment, like flipping a puck at someone to send a message, I thought it was great. And I can't wait until those teams play again, because I think that this is just going to escalate into a bigger and bigger rivalry with the Leafs and Flames. And think about, this is a team that the Leafs don't, normally play, obviously, right? I mean, they play them a couple times a year, but now you're going to be playing this team 9 to 10 times in a season like this. So it's going to be very interesting to see what this turns into moving forward.
Yeah, I'm like you. Like, I'm not saying like, oh my God, this is amazing, this is going to make us such a better team. But for me, where it hits, and I'm sure it hits for a lot of Leafs fans, is that if you roll back to when we were playing Boston and losing to the Bruins, there was always that stuff after the whistle and like, that late hit they would do where a little jab to the face and those little things, or something like what Muzzin did, like something that like a Brad Marchand would do or whoever would do on the Bruins. And deep down, Leafs fans knew that we didn't have that. Like, we all knew that at this, the Bruins are better than us and they're going to get away with it. And they know exactly what they're doing. And we were always kind of insecure about it. So again, I'm not looking at it as a huge deal. They're like, oh yeah, we have this now. This is our identity. It's just, it's nice to see. But like, I'll get your take on this, because we talked about the pests. Like, you brought up like the Brad Marchands, and like I think of like guys like Sean Avery. Did you see that footage after of how rattled Tkachuk got?
Oh my God, he was like,
he lost his mind.
Max rattled. Dude was slamming the bench, acting like.
That's what was weird to me, because I look back and the whole thing about being a pest is that you don't care. You know what I mean? Like, almost like no matter what happens, you don't care. Like, I've never seen Brad Marchand lose it like that to my memory. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember him ever like losing it after something like that happened. Guys like Sean Avery. So like, I did find it weird that, he's used to this stuff all the time. Like, usually he dishes it out. He can take it. I don't know. Like, he went off. Like, one thing that they talked about on the panel on Hockey Night in Canada, I don't know if you saw it, they thought maybe it was because he was kind of left on an island. Like, that puck got flipped at him, and then, whatever starts, and he was kind of fighting the Leafs like 1-on-3, and maybe because, his teammates didn't see what was going on, they were skating away. Like, do you think that was it? That maybe he was more, like, his brain was isolated on that as opposed to what actually happened between him and Muzzin?
Yeah, I heard them bring it up on the Hockey Night in Canada panel. saying that maybe his teammates didn't come to his defense. And I think that maybe did have something to do with it because, like you said, Matthew Tkachuk is a guy who he knows exactly what he's doing. He's very calculated. And even though he does a lot of these, crazy antics and pisses people off, he's always in control, right? He doesn't let any of these guys get to him, even going back to like the Drew Doughty rivalry. Right?
That was amazing.
Or even with Zach Cassian, he just always has that smirk on his face and he's just in control of the situation. And to see him just lose his shit and he's slamming the gate and throwing things, in the bench area as he's heading to the locker room, and Muzzin was just swimming in his head. Muzzin was totally in his head. And I think it was a combination of things. I think it was, he just realized, oh my God, someone just Matthew Tkachuk'd me. Number one. And then number two, he probably looked around and said, where are my teammates? And it's not like his teammates weren't there. Like, the scrum ensued afterwards. And I don't know if he was expecting one of his teammates to start throwing bombs and start whacking shins and things like that. Like, I don't know what he was expecting, but I could see that that's maybe why he was thrown off a little bit. But it was just so nice to see a guy like that just finally get rattled.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's like you said, right? It's not like this is changing the identity of the Toronto Maple Leafs, but you made a really good point saying how Leaf fans, I think, have been insecure about this because they've always known that other teams can do this to the Leafs, but that the Leafs really didn't have the ability to strike back when things like this happen, especially when you look at those Bruins series, right, with Brad Marchand. So yeah, overall, I think we can both agree, Lepore, that was a great sight to see as a Leaf fan. But I guess we can move on now to the next two games of the week against the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, all our biggest fans from Edmonton just love us.
Oh, man. And on last week's podcast, we absolutely shredded the Edmonton Oilers. And I got to
keep the comments coming, everybody. You love us, you hate us, you want to throw shit at us. We're here for passion, so keep it coming. Oilers fans, Habs fans, we love it.
We absolutely love it. Bring it on. Give us all you got. But the same thing happened, Lepore. Like it blows my mind. So McDavid and Draisaitl, they are 1-2 in scoring. Once again, they have combined for 32 points in 10 games. And I'm just sitting there watching the game laughing, okay, both of these Oilers games, because anytime the Oilers do anything, Lepore, it's the same two players. And it just boggles my mind how these guys are dominating once again. Like I said, they've combined for 32 points in 10 games, and the Oilers are 4-6 with a -6 goal differential. And the only way that they seem to stay in games sometimes is when they go to the power play, and then guess what?
Yeah.
McDavid or Draisaitl are scoring, or they're making an insane play happen, and everything is just created through those two guys. And if you look at that first game of the week against the Leafs, where the Oilers had like 6 power plays, I mean, that's exactly how they stayed in the game. I know the Leafs won, but what's your take on, the Leafs, Edmonton, and what's going on as well with the Edmonton Oilers?
I'll just focus in on that game. Like, I kind of want my scope on that game is kind of like a scope on hockey altogether. You always hear the arguments and the discussions about what can make hockey better. And, the referees are in on that they're trying to make hockey better. And people always speak to more goals. Like, maybe they don't want to quite get back to where we were in the 1980s, where every game's 8-5, 6-4. But they just want more goals. I think people want more scoring. Like in football, people want more touchdowns. But to me, like, my mindset's always been, like, I'd like to see more goals. Everyone likes more goals, but I don't want to just see power plays. Like, to me, like, just seeing teams go back and forth on the power play is not exciting. Like, I don't know if you remember the year after the lockout where they put in all those new clutching and grabbing rules. And players were adjusting. Like, it was a mess. Guys were getting called for everything. And you were seeing teams getting like 7-8 power plays a game. And it's hilarious because if you look back at seasons, so many players had their best offensive outputs in that year because there was so much power play time. I mean, think of it. If you're a star player, like think of this Leafs unit, if they were going to the power play that many times. I mean, yeah, they would all score 100 points because these high scoring games and this and that. But I just found it to be like bad. Like I don't want to see a game that has a lot of power plays. And there was those numbers that came out last year that it went nuts on Twitter where they showed every team's penalties taken and every team's amount of power plays. And it was hilarious because every team was about the same. Whereas in the way of like the power plays they get and the penalty kills that they have to deal with. So you'd think that, well, no, like some teams would take a lot of penalties and some teams would give a lot of penalties and then some teams would be even and it'd be spread out. But no, every team was about the same except for a few outliers. So what that shows is just the referees are just kind of giving them out when they want to make things even up. And then with that, you're going to get more power plays because if they are looking for that even up, I don't know. Like we're talking broadly about hockey now. And for me, like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to watch a game that just has 100 power plays. And even if it is a lot of goals and even a couple nice goals, I want to see 5-on-5, right? Just, I don't know. Like that's my take on it. I'm sure there are fans out there who love to see power plays. And like we just said, okay, you get to see Draisaitl and McDavid on the ice at the same time. And that's a great thing. And in the Leafs case, they get to put out all their talent, but I don't want to look at a game and point to a decider that was this team did really well on the power play, or they got a lot of power plays, I should say. I don't know. What's your take on the whole power play thing?
No, I think you nailed it. I think what I want to see, and I think what most fans would like to see, is just some really good action 5-on-5.
Yeah.
You know, and I know you're never going to simulate the action you see in 3-on-3. I mean, that's just another beast completely. And that's, you know, some of the most entertaining hockey you'll ever watch with all the space out there and, you know, guys free to roam offensively. But yeah, it's like when you see power play after power play, yeah, it's great seeing that cross seam pass, you know, from McDavid to Draisaitl or vice versa, or Marner to Matthews, and Matthews is sniping one top shelf. Like that's great. But when all of your offense and all the excitement is generated through the power play, that's just not right.
Yeah.
And you know, speaking about that game specifically, that Leafs 4-3 win over the Oilers on Thursday, you know, there were some questionable calls in that game where you saw
both ways.
There was a questionable call on Kerfoot. And then what I hate is like, then the refs go, oh, we screwed up that call. Now we got to give the Leafs a power play.
Yeah. Give me a break.
And then it goes back to what you said, where it's like the refs are just, you know, giving out power plays and trying to even things out. And listen, I know people want to see more goals, and power plays are great, and seeing McDavid do what he does and the other stars is great. But at the end of the day, you want to see the action 5-on-5.
Yeah.
Right.
Me personally, I don't really get it. Like, and I know they're trying to find new fans. They're trying to find more fans, different types of fans. And they think the avenue for that is more goals. But watching any sport, I mean, I can watch a 2-1 game and really enjoy it. Like if it's back and forth, like a goalie battle, like who doesn't enjoy watching a game where both goalies are standing on their head? And like I said, the game goes to overtime 1-1. It's amazing. Like even playoff baseball, I think more people dial in on playoff baseball and it's lower scoring. I can't relate to the whole thing if we need to see more goals in hockey for it to be better, like or more exciting. It's not something I think the game really and truly needs. Like we were at the point with the goalie gear and the clutching and grabbing where we were getting no goals. And that was a problem, but that was a problem not necessarily because of the sport. It was more because of what kind of had molded in the way of the rule calling, where they were letting everything go. And then you had the whole issue with the goalies, the pads and the uppers and this, and that. So things had to be changed, but the sport is great. Like even when it's a low scoring game, it's back and forth. It's awesome action. I don't need goals personally for it to be a great game. And that next step forward, I definitely don't want to see a lot of goals by way of a 5-on-4.
Yeah, no. I think you nailed it right on the head. I think we definitely need to see more action 5-on-5. And speaking of more action 5-on-5, I mean, I guess we got a little bit more of that in the next game of the week. on Saturday against.
Yeah, they were told everyone was complaining about that game. So yeah, we're gonna put the whistles away, like the NHL, ladies and gentlemen, the NHL. You just shake
exactly.
Your head. Give me a break.
And I'm sure, unless you've been living under a rock as a hockey fan, you've probably seen the Connor McDavid end-to-end goal against the Leafs, where he pretty much went through the entire team. Made
150 times, Bruno, in the last 12 hours, probably. But
it's unbelievable. I mean, he's making Jake Muzzin look like a house league defenseman out there. There was a couple plays where he just blows right by him, and he just goes through the entire team. And honestly, Lepore, it's unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And maybe you go back and you look at how Lemieux maybe used to go, sometimes through the whole team. I mean, Gretzky was more of like a cerebral player, always in the right spot, just knew where everyone was, thought the game so well. But just in terms of like the speed of McDavid and how he goes from 0 to 100 pretty much faster than any player I have ever seen play the sport. It's unbelievable. And it doesn't even matter how you prepare for him and you say, okay, we got to try to shut down 97 tonight. We're going to match up, this line, this defense pair against him. Lepore, it just doesn't matter. He's just out there embarrassing everyone. So what are your thoughts on what we've seen from McDavid so far this season?
It's funny you use the word embarrassed, how he embarrasses people, because I was going to touch on that. And you mentioned like the Gretzky and Lemieux thing. They say the power Gretzky had. Like, I mean, I saw Gretzky more like in my childhood with the Kings, but like back when he was in his prime with the Oilers. They say because he was so good and so patient that he used to make people nervous. So because he makes you nervous, and this is a compliment to anyone who has this ability, because they make you nervous, they even make you worse in that play, more vulnerable, I should say, because you're just overthinking the situation, because you can't help but think, okay, it's Gretzky with the puck. Kind of like the whole him behind the net thing. It's like, hey, what's he going to do? So because you're overthinking it, that's when you make a mistake. And my assumption is that that's what happens with McDavid, that because he's so good and he embarrasses guys so often, these guys, when he's picture that, Bruno, imagine you're a defenseman and he's flying in one-on-one with you, even beyond his ability, because you've seen it happen so often, you're even more nervous. So you're more prone to a mistake or to like overcommit or panic or like bite on something. And again, it's a compliment to him to have that ability. It's incredible. And like, I'm watching that goal and you can't help but think, what should teams do to try to stop him? Like, he just burned by Hyman in the neutral zone, and then he goes in like 1-on-3, kind of isolated Muzzin 1-on-1, undressed him. But I'm thinking, like, should you try to get a guy in the neutral zone to slow him down? Or if you're the 1-on-1 guy, should you just try to skate backwards as fast as you can to try to direct him to the side? So even if he does get a shot, it's not as great of a scoring chance. Like, I don't know. Because everything I mentioned, well, you put a guy in the neutral zone. Well, then if he's burnt, well, now he's in the zone with speed. And then if you just skate backwards as fast as you can, if you're 1-on-1 with him, well, he's got space to do other things. So he's just like, people often use the word cheat code. He's a cheat code. Like, there is no one like him. His abilities with the puck, with his speed, it's not fair how good he is. And like, we're lucky, man. Like I consider ourselves lucky to be able to see this player from the start of his career. And like, there's going to be a lot more of this. And as hockey fans, it's amazing. Like, the guy is amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible to watch. And you mentioned this on a previous podcast where, like, we might never see a guy this explosive for who knows how long. I mean, I don't want to say for, the rest of history, because players are just going to continue to get, bigger, faster, stronger. But I mean, it's almost like he's just playing a different game out there. And you said that you don't know how to stop Connor McDavid, Lepore. I don't think any team knows how to stop Connor McDavid, because he does the same thing to every single team. And all you need to do is just watch the highlights at the end of the night. It doesn't matter which team he's playing. There's going to be a highlight where he's just blowing around another defenseman. And it's like you said, when he's coming in on you as a defenseman, you try your best to kind of push him to the outside, but then that could be a problem, because he could beat you to the outside even if you're trying to contain him. And then if you kind of commit too far to that side, he's just going to cut back into the middle and beat you right up the middle of the ice. So it's almost like a lose-lose situation. And you're almost just hoping that maybe you can poke the puck off his stick. I mean, because it's very difficult to get a body on that guy. And people say all the time, stand him up at the blue line, be physical. Yeah. There's only so much you can do with players like that, who are that quick, who can do a little head fake and then move in either direction at any, in a split second, right? So it's like you said, it's incredible to watch Lepore, and I think we're lucky to watch this guy play right now and hopefully play for a very long time.
I don't know if did you see the Barry comments after? Because someone asked Tyson Barry about it, and he said, like, maybe just take a penalty. Like, because someone asked him, like, do you know how to stop? Do you know how to stop this? Like, kind of joking, like, how do you stop that? And he's like, I don't know. Do you take a penalty? Do you just grab him? And like, you ask Muzzin now, yeah, he probably would have done that. Like, I wonder if we get to that point. I mean, you should be aware of the score in the game, maybe, but you're just going to see guys like just try to slow them up. Like I mentioned the clutching and grabbing thing before. Who cares? Like, if your team's up by 2 goals or whatever, just try your best to do whatever you can to stop them. And if you take a penalty, you take a penalty. I mean,
it's almost like hack a Shaq.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like Shaq is just dominating in the paint. There's nothing you can do. He's just going to dunk over you. He's bigger and stronger than everybody. And it's the same thing with McDavid. Maybe we get to a point where coaches are telling their players, listen, if he's about to fly by you, stick out your stick. If you get a tripping penalty, so be it. We take our chances on the power play.
Yeah, and there's a 20% chance the Oilers score, and there's probably a greater than 20% chance he's going to fly by you and score. So
exactly, yeah, that's a very interesting point. And you know what? I think teams are going to continue to just try to get more creative when it comes to stopping a guy like that, right? I mean, you could maybe say the same thing about Nathan McKinnon in terms of speed, but McDavid he's just on another level.
Yeah,
it's insane to watch. But Lepore, there was another big thing that happened in the Saturday night game. It was the debut of the Oilers and Leafs retro reverse jerseys.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah.
So this season, the NHL had every single team make a reverse retro jersey where they had to get a design from the past and modernize it. And there was some really good jerseys, some really bad jerseys. It created a big stir on social media. And Lepore, you've said this in the past. I know you are a big-time jersey snob. Yeah. You have a million jerseys. You're the jersey guy. I'm not a jersey guy. So I'm going to throw it over to you on this. I need your thoughts on the Toronto Maple Leafs reverse retro jersey.
It's not a million jerseys, by the way, Bruno. It's just I'm at a couple 100,000. So in terms of the Leafs jerseys, I think what was disappointing to me, and I'm sure disappointing to a lot of Leafs fans, is that they're okay. Like they kind of played it safe with, like, they went navy blue with the gray, the old logo. Again, I don't think anyone points to that jersey and is like, oh my God, wow, that's terrible. It's just kind of fine. It's fine. And you want something more than that, especially with that type of theme. Like, okay, it's reverse retro. They can do something fun and funky. And I find quite often, and maybe you tell me, I find quite often with a lot of that stuff is that the Leafs, they kind of hold to their original 6 guns and do something just like, it's nice and it's clean and it's sharp, but they don't go out there. And again, we live in a different world now. And like you mentioned how, like, on social media, like, fans were going nuts for certain jerseys. Well, what are the ones everyone loved? Like the Ducks one sold out everywhere. That, like, Mighty Wing or whatever it's called one sold out everywhere because it's different and fun, brings people back to the 90s. People loved it. People loved the LA Kings one. Like the purple with the yellow brings people back. I myself, like, one of my favorite jerseys of all time is the Minnesota North Stars. So I loved how the Minnesota Wild went to those colors. I just thought Toronto could have done more with that jersey. Like, I look back to when they wore, like, the forest green. I'm like, maybe they could have done that, but then maybe they didn't want to, come too close to what they currently wear for the St. Pats. Or I love what they had in the Sittler the Sittler era with, like, the stripes down the arms and, like, the sharp white, which again, they kind of went that way, but went half-assed because it was gray. And I know a lot of fans were hoping for that, but again, like I'm not gonna go crazy. It's just a jersey. I don't think it's terrible. I laugh when people say, "Oh, this is an embarrassment or an insult to the Toronto Maple Leafs and whatever." Like, give me a break.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like simmer down.
yeah, like they're trying to sell a different jersey guys. Like, everyone relax. And people always do forget that they're trying to get kids excited too. Like, I'm just generally talking about sports now when these new jerseys come out and people flip out. Like, so yeah, I mean, I wish I could have seen more. Edmonton too, man. Like, if you look back, like, I've always loved Edmonton's last WHA jersey. It was a navy blue and there was orange in the logo. And I would have loved to see them doing something like that rather than them do just kind of like that white with the orange. And I'm sure they did it in a way that, like, certain teams can wear them against each other like they did last night. So we need a certain amount of darks and a certain amount of whites. But I thought like that would have been cool if the Oilers did something like that. And at the same time, give like a shout out to the WHA, right? So, but yeah, I mean, not that big of a deal. To me, it's always fun to talk about jerseys, point to like what we'd like to see, what we don't like. But I'm looking forward to the next one because like there were a lot of calls on Twitter and among the Leafs jersey snobs about the ones from the 80s. Like the Rick Vive one, the Sittler one, the Salming one, those ones, like those, everyone's got that hockey card with Alan Bester in like, you know, the sharp white with the blue down the arms. So I don't know, man. I assume it's someone's job at Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment to follow what the Twitter trends and to try to find out what people would like to see. So if someone was paying attention, that'll be the next one. And I'll be the one sleeping over to try to get it first.
Oh, we know you're going to be first on that list.
Yeah, man.
But here's what I will say about the jersey. So I'm watching the game.
Oh, I think I know where you're going to go, but go ahead.
My girlfriend's sitting beside me. Okay. She's not a hockey fan. She's not a sports fan. She's just sort of on her phone. She looks up for the first time in like the third period, Saturday night, Leafs Oilers. And she goes, "That's an ugly jersey." Looking at the Leafs jersey, did not make a comment the entire game about anything that was happening. Connor McDavid scores one of the goals of the season. My girlfriend doesn't give a shit, but she looks up and looks at the Leafs jerseys and she thought they were ugly.
Really? Okay.
And that's coming from someone who, you know, isn't a hockey fan, doesn't really watch hockey unless I'm watching it. But
that's a bad sign.
But here's what I'll say, Lepore. I'm kind of with you where it's like they're just okay. Like they could have done more, and I think the Oilers could have done more as well. And I think maybe the big thing is the gray and blue with that reverse retro jersey. I mean, a lot of people would have liked to see white and blue, but like I get it, right? Because you have to try and make it different. And, you know, every Leaf jersey, you know, besides like the St. Pat's jerseys are all white and blue. So I could see why they were trying to be a little bit different, you know, adding in the gray. But for the most part, yeah, I'm not nearly the jersey guy that you are, but so I wasn't offended at all. Like some Leaf fans are like, this is an abomination, the worst jerseys ever. We should be ashamed of ourselves. Like I do not take things that far when it comes to the jerseys, but I'm with you in terms of they could have been better. It just seemed like the Leafs I don't want to say they were lazy with it, but they could have put a little bit more thought and energy into it, I guess.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about the jerseys themselves, and I'll quickly mention one thing they maybe could have done. I found like on the ice, you couldn't see the numbers very well. Did you notice that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that was a fail. Like again, they're different. They wear them. I think they're only going to wear them twice this year. But I wonder if that's a thing. And I'm sure they test this stuff. But it's like at least at the start, I was like kind of like, for example, when Muzzin fell at the end of the game for that breakaway, I thought it was Hall. Yeah. Because again, like you couldn't really see the numbers. And it's just, back to one thing quickly of what I hope they do. If you look back, there used to be a baseball team called the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they may still exist in some minor league or something, but their logo is this old maple leaf with a basic T in it. And it is an amazing logo. And I think even the Leafs in the 60s wore it on some swag and some practice stuff. So I think it's kind of like a not too well-known piece of Maple Leafs history that I'd love to see them bring back. It's awesome. Like that vintage look that's still like cool and different. So, anyways, enough about my jersey obsession. Let's move on to something else. That's another podcast. Lepore's jersey observation
podcast with you on the Leafs' next jersey that comes out at some point. So
yeah,
we'll get to that when that happens. But Lepore, speaking about this, just the Canadian division in general. Okay, so as we know, the Leafs are in first, the Habs and Canucks right behind them. At the bottom of the division is the Ottawa Senators. So
yeah,
after their first game of the season against the Leafs, they surprised everyone. They hadn't played for 300 and whatever days. They beat the Leafs 5-3. Since that first win over the Leafs, the Senators have lost 7 games in a row and have been outscored 33-12.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know the score. I didn't even know that scoring stat. Wow.
They have been outscored by 21 goals over the last 7 games. So,
okay.
There was this whole narrative that, they got Tim Stützle now and Brady Tkachuk, who we're both very high on.
Yeah.
But people thought maybe the Senators would be a little bit further along in their rebuild than we originally thought, based on the talent that they had brought in the offseason, even bringing in guys like Evgeny Dadonov, right? But now it just seems like the rest of these teams in the Canadian division, if things aren't going well, look at the Vancouver Canucks. There we go. We got the Senators on the schedule. Let's beat them up and demolish them over 3 games and get right back into the playoff race. And that's exactly what's probably going to happen with the Edmonton Oilers, because 4 out of their next 5 games are against the Senators. So, Lepore, what are your thoughts just sort of on the Canadian division in general, and also what we're seeing with the Ottawa Senators just stinking it up in the basement right now?
Yeah, well, quickly with what you mentioned, I noticed one of the Sens reporters tweeted that out, that it'll be an ongoing thing throughout the season of like looking at the Canadian division standings and then pointing to, well, how many games do they have left against the Senators? Almost kind of like referring to it as games in hand. But like looking at the division, it's early, but it's kind of like what we expected in the way that with the Leafs, with the talent they had going into the season, we expected them to be a team that was near the top. And so far we're getting that. We mentioned Montreal, how we really like their lineup, how they're balanced. They have the best goalie in the world. So we expect them to be near the top. And everyone else, we were kind of expecting a cluster. And so far there hasn't been any real surprises. If you do want to call the Sens a surprise, like it's a tough one, because I think sometimes we often make the mistake looking at a team that makes a lot of changes, and we kind of naturally associate a lot of change with getting better. And like, I'll admit it, I guess I was fooled, because I saw the guys they brought in and I'm like, okay, like nothing crazy, but it looks fine. And you have some solid NHLers there, some guys who can score, some talent, maybe guys looking for a new beginning or a chance to show off so they can sign a new contract. You bring Murray in, who, okay, he got paid, and he should be in a comfortable spot. So you expect, this is it for him now. He can relax, maybe play well for a long time in Ottawa, kind of rebrand himself. But it has been really bad. And the scary thing is here, living in Ottawa, is that people are starting to turn a little bit. And this is a city that they do care about their Sens here. Like, contrary to the belief of a lot of people across the country, there are a lot of Senators fans here, and they do really care about their team. So you kind of hate to see that group of fans having to deal with what they're dealing with now, because there was cause for a lot of excitement. Like, those fans have been through the shitter, like with Melnyk the last couple of years, and with star players leaving, and they went into the season with a lot of optimism, because like they do have Stützle. He has a great World Juniors. He's an exciting player. They have Brady Tkachuk. They have Sanderson, that American kid who's a great prospect. Thomas Chabot is unreal.
Awesome.
Like absolutely unreal. Like, everyone, whenever they do those, projected Team Canada Olympic lineups, he's there. And you look at the guys that they brought in, and you look at the team statistics, and no one's stepping up, man. Like I'd love to hear more from Sens fans, and comment down below about who you think can step up or who hasn't stepped up. And if you want to shit on certain players because they're not what you expected them to be, because I look at Galchenyuk, you mentioned Dadonov, they brought in Paquette from Tampa, because you do look at their defensive core. And like you have Shabbat, you have this young star, and they've surrounded him with Goodbranson, who, as far as advanced stats go, is in a race with Cody Ceci to be the worst player in the National Hockey League. You have Riley and you have Nikita Zaitsev. It's like, man, you are asking that kid to do a lot. And with that, you are risking a lot with his confidence. Like we see it all the time, these defensemen who have great starts to their career and then they kind of fade away because like their confidence is just smashed because they play on a bad team. And I'm not saying I'm predicting Thomas Chabot to do that, but it's not something that's in the back of my mind in the way that he might not progress the way we're hoping because of this environment. And even like Stützle, someone pointed out, they brought up the, what's the metric? It was 5-on-5 expected goals for and against. And it's early in the season, so you don't want to read too much into it, but Stützle's the worst player in the league in that stat. Now, again, the kid's 19 years old. He just turned 19. It's his rookie season, and that stat has a lot to do with the players you're playing with and the team you play for. But, I mean, no one expects this kid to be really good defensively, like number one being 19, number one being an offensive player, and his first year in the league. I just think it's a reflection of the environment he's in. Like, to be the worst in the league. Again, and to me, it's just they did not do a good enough job of identifying what these kids need to be around them so far anyway, because these players haven't stepped up and just done their best to put them in a situation where they can progress. Because I don't think anyone thought, like, even when we said in the earlier show about, we expect a lot from the Senators, we're excited for the Senators. And that was kind of the take of a lot of Sens fans, that they were excited about this team. They were excited for this season. But when they were saying that, I don't think they were referring to, oh, we're going to make the playoffs or go on a run. They just thought, they would, when they got to watch their team, they would see a group that's young, exciting, score a lot of goals, fight in every game. Like we mentioned, be annoying. Like we thought, oh, they would be a really annoying team to play against. And even if they, they miss the playoffs or whatever, like, give them a round of applause. They're a bunch of kids, great young season. Players put up good numbers, but they're not even getting to see that. Like they're seeing this team just get obliterated every night. Like those games against Vancouver were ugly. They were ugly. And if you follow the Senators Twitter world, now even people are shitting on DJ Smith. Like here's his coach who couldn't do no wrong. Now they're shitting on him for the minutes he's handing out, like not playing the kids. And that being said too, yeah, like fans, I've seen fans point to that and they're kind of entitled to do that, saying, well, if we're losing, we might as well play the kids. But the Sens are an interesting one, man. Like I hope they turn it around. You don't want to see a team have that bad of a season. Like recently we can point to Detroit had Detroit one of those
last season was
oh my God, like really bad. Remember even a couple of years ago that season, I think Colorado got like 45 points.
Yeah.
Like when these kids first got there and like Duchesne was still there. Like you don't want to see teams that low. Like one of the big Sens writers posted the other day saying he thinks it's a coin flip to see if they get 10 wins in a 56 game season. And like, this is a Sens writer. So like, this is stuff I'm creating. Like, these are their fans. This is like their media pointing to these things, like worried. And like, I'll throw this question at you. If you're the Sens, I mean, everyone knew, again, they didn't expect them to be very good. So they expected another high pick. But other than, okay, we're going to be bad again and get another good pick, what should they do? It's not too often that you can see a team situation and not have a real clue of what they should do when it comes to the next move and getting better. Like, the bad teams, it's easy to say, okay, they should come last, get a good pick and go from there. But even the case of like, okay, they're going to sell off their veterans there and, create cap space and fill it and then get picks and do whatever, use their assets, or vice versa. You have the team on the up. Okay, they got to sign a big guy now. Now's the time to pull the trigger to put us over the edge. With the Sens, where they're at right now, I don't really know, like other than getting that pick again, because the guys they picked up and the guys with expiring deals, they're not going to get much. No one's going to break the neck for no one's going to break the bank for Goodbranson or Stepan. So I don't know. Like, what's your take on that one?
Yeah, I just think the Senators have to be patient. And I think it just comes back to expectations, right? Because we've seen teams, just in the recent past, like the Leafs, right? Where Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Connor Brown, and Zach Hyman, these guys all come in, right, as rookies.
Yeah.
And they immediately make an impact, right? Like the Leafs immediately turn things around, become a playoff team. And you're like, wow, like, rebuilds are supposed to take longer than this. Like teams are supposed to struggle for 3 to 5 years and go through the ups and downs. And, not to say the Leafs haven't gone through their ups and downs. They obviously have. But in terms of going from a really bad team to being a competitive playoff team, the Leafs showed, and there's been other teams, right? Even if you look at like Pittsburgh with Crosby and Malkin. But I think what fan bases do is that they look at situations like that, and you could even look at Chicago with Kane and Taves, and they go, well, this has to happen immediately because it's happened in the past with these teams. But that's not necessarily how it works all the time. And I think, like I said, I think it just comes down to expectations. And you also have to realize who you're going up against in this division, right? So 10 out of these 56 games, 9 or 10, whatever it is, you're playing the Leafs, who have, one of the best offensive teams in the league. Then you're playing McDavid and Draisaitl. Then you're playing that really solid Vancouver team with Pettersson, Horvat, and Besser. So when you kind of look at the cores of all these other Canadian teams, even looking at the Flames with Gaudreau, Monahan, Lindholm, right, Markstrom and net, and you stack that up against the Senators, you're like, hold on a second. The Senators are still not where they need to be. And yes, it's great that they have Tkachuk and Tim Stützle and Thomas Chabot, who looks like an absolute stud on the back end, but they're just not there yet. And yes, would I like to see better play from Matt Murray, who's won 2 Stanley Cups and who has shown that he can be one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League? Would I like to see his numbers get better? Of course, because his numbers suck right now. And that is, a reason why the Senators aren't playing well, but it's a lot of things. The team, offensively isn't there. Defensively, they're giving up way too many chances. I mean, it's like you said, they got absolutely obliterated by Vancouver. What's going to happen when they play McDavid and Draisaitl for the first time, right? So I think it's just one of those things where just stay the course. You're going to get another really high draft pick this year. Continue to add to that core. And, I know they brought in guys like Stepan and Dadonov and, Matt Murray, as I mentioned. But at the end of the day, this team is not going to go out there and sign like a big high-ticket free agent. They're just not, right?
And that's what I was referring to in the way, like, I don't really know what they do. Like, you can't expect that from the Sens, that they're going to sign some big guy. No, that's not going to happen.
And that's
not
why
to sound condescending, but it's not.
No, but it's true, right? It's just the reality of the situation. It's not just the Ottawa Senators. There's a number of teams out there who are not attracting big-name free agents, right? So, and I think when you think about it like that, patience becomes even more important. You got to continue building through the draft. And listen, I know there's been issues with Eugene Melnyk and ownership and all that, and Sens fans, have some very strong opinions on that, and maybe just the whole culture surrounding the team. But I would like to think with the young talent they do have in place, and listen, the jury's still out on DJ Smith. We don't exactly know how great of a coach he actually is. I mean, only time will tell over the next few seasons. But again, I think Sens fans just have to relax a little bit, let this situation play out, continue to stockpile draft picks, and go from there.
Yeah, I think you got me thinking, actually. So 7 teams in the division. So you play 6 other teams. So in 50% of their games, the 2 centers are going to be Matthews, Tavares, Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois. And what was the other one I was going to say?
McDavid
Draisaitl. That's half your games. Those are the 2 centers you're playing. Like, good luck. Like you're a young rebuilding team. Good luck. And then there's also the matter of, I think when people, again, these turnarounds, and not to be like, oh, it was the Leafs, but I think sometimes what we often forget is when we did have all those kids coming in And we didn't realize it at the time. But like we mentioned, these guys like Dadonov and Stepan, and they brought in Galchenyuk. So let's look back at who those kids were added to on the Leafs. Nazem Kadri, Bozak, James Van Riemsdyk, Riley, Gardner. Like they were guys like that. That's a decent team. And that these kids were brought into it. And like maybe we didn't even realize it at the time of like, yeah, those guys are all pretty good players. Now we're bringing these kids and we had no idea what to expect. And it was a great fun season. So, and again, you mentioned Chicago. Man, you want to laugh? Go look at that 2010 roster and look at that depth. Like it's it's insane. You like forget, they had Andrew Ladd. Oh.
Yeah.
Like
Bufflin.
Yeah, like Versteeg, like all these like amazing depth players. That team was so good. These teams were adding kids to good solid cores. And it's with the Sens right now, it's like you're adding these kids. And again, we didn't realize it at the time. But then when you see it on the ice, you're like, wow, they are getting thrown to the wolves, man. Thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see, how poorly they've been playing. And, it's like, you said even how that writer mentioned he might not even see this team winning 10 games this season. I don't know if it's going to be that bad. But what I do know is that this team is destined to finish last in the division.
Yeah.
And you know what? Go out there, try your best to be competitive on a nightly basis. It's all at that point, I think in Ottawa right now, it's just have a good culture.
Right.
Go out there, try hard, show that you care, try to stay competitive in some of these games, but it's going to be an uphill battle. But Lepore, shifting back to the Leafs now, they're going to have a few days off coming up.
Yeah,
they
need it. They need it. 10 games in 18 days, man. They need
the grind.
They deserve it. Yeah.
And, so next week they have 2 games, both against the Vancouver Canucks. We have not seen the Leafs play the Canucks yet this season. So what are you looking forward to next week when the Leafs are back in action?
You mentioned the Canucks. I'm looking forward to playing a different team. It's kind of funny. I was having this conversation with someone else saying when we first saw this schedule and this Canadian division, we got excited about back-to-backs and playing teams 3 times in a week, thinking it'd be awesome, this and that. But then there's that kind of thing. Like I don't want to use the word bored because that's a negative word. But seeing the same teams over and over again, it's going to be nice to see a new team in the Canucks and a new opponent. And as the season progresses, we're going to get a better gauge of where these teams lie. So I'm excited. I'm excited to play the Canucks because even them, they're a team that like things could go either way. And we wouldn't be shocked if they fire up the standings or if they drop. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun to watch the Leafs play the Canucks, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited for these Canucks games because coming into the season, I actually thought that the Leafs and Canucks would be 1-2 in the division.
Oh, okay.
And I know that the Canucks, you could maybe look at their goaltending, and their goaltending's been fine, but you could maybe look at that as a little bit of a weakness, and they got off to a bad start. But like I was saying, you get the Senators on the schedule and things can turn around for you really quick. And now look at the Canucks, right? Their confidence is back. Pedersen's back to playing well. Brock Besser's playing well. Horvat has a point a game. So that's a very potent top 6. And I think that's going to be a really nice test for the Leafs. They actually play the Canucks 3 games in a row. So there's 2 next week, and then their first game in the following week is also against the Canucks. So it should be a great battle for the Leafs next week, and we'll see how things go. And after going 7-2-1 the first 10 games, Lepore, like we talked about,
high expectations.
Leaf plan right now.
Yeah, we got high expectations now, Leafs. Don't let us down. There's a new standard.
Don't let us down.
We know you will.
Exactly. All right. That is going to do it for episode 4 of the Gluttons for Punishment podcast. Once again, thank you so much for listening to us wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's on Apple or Google. Make sure you go on there, subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star rating and review. We would appreciate that so much. And then for those watching on YouTube, thank you so much as well. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell for all the notifications when we release new videos throughout the week. So thank you so much for the support. For Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. We will see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Cause on my mic and I say, yo, flow.